ChatGPT and Gen AI tools have hit the mainstream. The chatter was everywhere, by almost everyone. We feel the discussion has been more philosophical than practical. We know enterprise technologists are using real AI to create efficiencies that result in real business outcomes. So, we created a show to talk to real practitioners about real-world active projects that are leveraging this exciting new technical advantage. Welcome to LiveAI.
Welcome to another installment of LiveAI, the show that brings real-life enterprise use cases to the people. With me today is Justin Floyd, Chief Executive Officer at RedCloud Technology, a company that's using AI to help retailers compete with Amazon. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you, Tony. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Now, your overall use of AI to even the playing field and promote free trade makes for a pretty amazing story. Before we get to that, into that part of the conversation, can you tell us where you are specifically using artificial intelligence as part of your offering?
Yeah, three areas, Tony. I mean, the first area is around inventory control. One of the biggest challenges. I mean, you're probably used to it, the Amazon experience as a consumer. You know what that feels like. You know, you have to go online, you have to search through multiple products, you have to try and figure out the best price, work out the best delivery terms, get to the checkout, pay for it, and hopefully it gets delivered when they say it will be. You know, when you're a retailer, you know, you've got to do that exercise many times over and many times a day in order to keep stock control. So we're using AI very specifically to help retailers both do three things really well. One is to be able to manage their inventory in a much more effective way than they can do today. You know, still so much of that whole supply chain is offline, and still there's so much kind of manual processes, manual workarounds that go on. And there's lots of reasons for that. We can talk about that a little bit later. The second area is the kind of defense against counterfeits. Counterfeit is a big problem at the moment. It's becoming a bigger problem. It's $2 trillion problem a year. How do you know that the product now you're getting, online's one thing, but even in an offline store, how do you know that product you're getting as a consumer is authentic and it's real and it's the product you believe you're supposed to be getting? And when your livelihood depends on that as a retailer, you've got to get that right every single time. So secondly is around the counterfeiting area. And thirdly is around choice. So it's around actually, there are some great brands. So for example, in your country, in the US, there's some incredible brands that bring out wonderful, sustainable products that are really authentic, the great value, the lower price. You know, often they taste great, often better than the incumbent brands. You know, those brands aren't even seeing light of day at the moment because it's so difficult for them to break into the kind of commerce markets that dominate both online and offline spaces. So we're really helping retailers use AI to actually help them make informed choices from where they could be getting products from that maybe they wouldn't normally be used to getting those products from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, and when you think about all those use cases combined, what kind of results have the retailers seen?
Fantastic. I mean, we did, just some high level numbers, and we hit just over $2 billion worth of trading volume annualized over the last quarter. Retailers, you know, some of these guys are actually, they're doing three things again really well. One is that they're clawing back a huge amount of their time. I came from a world in which, you know, my family was very much involved with trading. And one of the things, you know, I used to see my mother doing, for example, she'd spend, you know, sometimes 12 hours a day trying to source inventory and source inventory for a store. So what we've done is we've really been able to give that time back to retailers. Secondly, we're helping them actually make more profit. You know, retailers in particular are so under the cosh when it comes to their profitability. And you're seeing margins now of kind of 2 or 3%. I mean, you just can't manage a business on that. You can't scale a business on that. You can't even pay your school fees out of that kind of margin. And these businesses, you know, they're the heartbeat of the economy. And when we shut their oxygen off, that's a big problem. So we're helping. What we've seen is that they're using AI to actually help them buy much smarter than they were able to do before. They can see much more instantly pricing. They can see their margin against that pricing. They can work out, you know, very quickly what the best time to buy that product is, when to get it, where to get it from, how to get it, and how to get that delivered, you know. And every single step of that, you know, hits their margin in a normal situation. AI is really helping them kind of reduce that level. And thirdly, it's also, as I mentioned earlier, it's helping them buy different kinds of brands. So often, you know, there's much more competitive pricing out there than they're actually aware of that they can actually get and they're not aware of it. So we're helping them kind of achieve that. And so they're actually bringing back, we've seen instances of up to 10% increased profitability for them. We've seen them bringing back, in terms of their time, 30, 40 hours a week back into their life. And thirdly, what we're seeing is that they're actually building a better consumer experience for themselves with the customers that they operate with. So they're actually able to offer better quality products at a better price on the kinds of terms that consumers love. And we think that's a better world from everybody. That's very different to the world that Amazon, I think, would like you to be involved in. I think Amazon see a world which is pretty dystopian. They call themselves the world's or Earth's largest retailer. And they want you to buy everything through them. They want to buy through them on their terms, with their brands, with the way in which they want to do business. And we don't think that's the right thing to do. We believe fundamentally people like choice. They love to buy from people they trust. And they love to buy locally as well. They love to buy from their local stores. And we want to bring that world back. We really want to bring retail back home to the retailers and give them a much more level playing field in which they can actually start to trade against those kind of behemoth e-commerce platforms that have been around for the last kind of 2 decades.
Well, this is shaping up to be quite a David versus Goliath story, one that has a very personal angle, which we'll explore on our YouTube channel. Justin, I'd love to hear why you started RedCloud.
So I've been, I came from a background, I came from a pretty tough background in North London. Our family was really poor. They survived by, being able to trade inventory. Basically, my mum had a small store. And I grew up with that, and I founded my first business when I was 17. And I knew, for any of us and all of us have been an entrepreneur at some point, right? Whether it's the way in which we've taken kind of work, or whether it's we've had our own business, we've all been through that exercise and that process, and we've all faced the enormous hurdles we've had to get through to try and build, even just a lifestyle business, let alone a successful business. So that's really where I got the idea from. Initially, I'd been building out tech companies. We've been doing some incredible work. I built out a company called Vector Software that was one of the leading business intelligence tech companies that were supplying software to distribution companies to help them actually reduce their inventory and help them trade more profitably. That was really important to me because those distributors were selling to a lot of little stores. And when I came across the RedCloud opportunity, I've been out actually working for my first time in my life in Africa, and I'd seen firsthand just how tough it was in those markets for small businesses to actually, just even operate, let alone survive. And I really thought, there was a great opportunity then to actually start to build out a new kind of infrastructure and also almost do a technology leapfrog and actually build a new kind of infrastructure that was actually built from ground up for retailers. And I believe fundamentally we had the opportunity to build, rather than the world's largest retailer, to actually build the world's largest retailer store and actually give an opportunity for retailers to be able to operate on a trusted platform that they could buy and sell inventory. Nobody had ever done that before. And so when I started that exercise, I got a group of investors together. I told them the bad news that it's going to probably take at least 8 years. I would need at least $100 million in capital. I was going to put up a lot of my own capital myself and quite a lot of my livelihood against that.
Only 100 million.
Yes, only 100 million. And actually, we just about managed to do that. And so, 8 years later, we built out, some incredible technology and built an amazing team behind that. And I think, one of the kind of key things around RedCloud in my business, it's not just about RedCloud. It's about this whole concept of open commerce. How do we break down the silos? How do we create a democratized trading environment for the world that enables small retailers, small businesses to be able to succeed, where the big businesses have really kind of, gobbled everything up. We believe, in actually kind of paring that back and bringing that back to small businesses, helping them really try and scale successfully.
Wow, that's spectacular. And I love the personal angle. You've seen it in your own life, and being able to take the technology that you're doing to make a difference to help others succeed. Really, really admirable. When you were thinking about this business idea, sticking to the theme of the show being AI-related, AI use cases, was it designed specifically in mind with AI empowering this from the beginning? Did it come in later after the fact as you started to prove out the business model? Take us a little bit through, your thinking of applying actual artificial intelligence into the business platform.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So I think I mentioned previously that Vector Software, which is a company I founded back in 1987, I think it was. interestingly, we were one of the very first companies to introduce the concept of BI back then, which is essentially, the kind of next level down, shall we say, from AI. But what was interesting about that business, it was really one of the very first businesses that actually created the Amazon effect. So it created this idea where, customers who like this particular product also like that kind of product. And of course, as you'll know, the technology behind that is really complicated. And it's complicated because, of course, first of all, you need a huge data cloud. And that data cloud has to be able to organize information in a really kind of interesting and clever way. And then it needs to be able to actually bring that data out of that environment, put that through, back then you're putting it through all kinds of CSV file extracts and SQL kind of data kind of capability. And it was just horrible. It was clunky. It was terrible. But eventually it kind of worked. And then the cloud came along. We saw all the opportunities around that. So when I founded RedCloud, initially, actually, we started off with actually acquiring some technology, which was actually payment technology. And our original idea was to use this kind of AI, BI angle around payments and actually deliver smart payments to people and figure out, actually, if you've got to pay this supplier on this particular day, if you use it through this particular route, you pay a lot less money for that transaction you normally would do. But then we realized very quickly there existed this enormous opportunity to grow that out across open commerce and actually involve much more of the value chain and the trading chain. That's what we started to do. So yeah, the answer is, right from day one, I've always been a bit of a data nerd, and I've always believed strongly in the power of data, and particularly I think the power of this kind of inventory data, which has really been overlooked by a lot of people, and it kind of sits in three different silos. One is with the manufacturers. Some of the companies like Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, they've got infinite amounts of capital to spend on data warehouses, data lakes, data lake houses, to try and make sense of that data. Distributors and wholesalers have not got that luxury. They've really, these guys are operating on the kind of 3-4% operating margin. So they're really skinny in what they can invest in terms of technology. So they're making do with, a bit of distribution management back office software and an Excel spreadsheet on the front of that, and they're sticking that on a website. And they're saying to their retailers, come and order from that. And then the retailer experience, of course, looks like that. They're logging into a website in front of them. They've got a 187-page Excel spreadsheet. They're trying to work out, what they should be buying, what their inventory should look like. So when we started RedCloud, right from day one, we said, look, let's build an end-to-end data warehouse that can take care of all three of those guys. The retailer gets the same experience as the distributor gets the same experience as the manufacturer. And what can we do to make that a lot smarter? So we arguably built this enormous data, what we didn't realize at the time, was data lake. And we just brought all this data in. And then we started to kind of build out the big ETL stuff to be able to extract that data in a really smart way. I think what was clever what we did is we enabled retailers to be able to access that data through an app. And they were able to actually see instantly inventory pricing, quality of delivery, alternative product sets, alternative pricing capability, volume discounts, all the stuff that, they would spend hours going through spreadsheets.
Hours.
Yeah. And that's where I think the real use case for AI is in our particular vertical, is a big use case around all that. That's a long answer. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I think you touched on something that, we always talk about how, you need data for artificial intelligence. And if you've got access to data that is unique in nature, whether it's your organization or to a problem space, then you can reap tremendous value from data.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I think is interesting that you did is that you took a space where each of them would struggle to actually make use of the data they even have to, create a better solution, and have taken it upon yourselves to go build your own data platform so that everyone can consume something that they didn't have to build themselves in order to reap the benefits of all the unique data that all those organizations have combined.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize actually, the COVID situation is a big wake-up call for the so-called supply chain. I think a lot of people kind of have this image of a supply chain in their heads where they think it's like container ships and airplanes and, somehow there's some technology behind all this stuff that makes it work. I think what a lot of people don't realize actually, supply chains actually are really kind of tiny little micronism, local supply chains that are all connected then to an international supply chain, which is then connected to a world supply chain, which is then connected to a global supply chain. And as you can imagine, there's a hell of a lot that goes wrong along the way, along that stretch. And so bringing that data together in a really kind of consolidated way was a tough thing to do, because it's horribly fragmented. And there's two types of data we're working with, which I think is interesting. One is the inventory data, all those product SKUs, different product environments. You're probably aware, things like Dolomio sauce. There's 52 different varieties of Dolomio sauce. I think today there's something like about 1,500 different varieties of Coca-Cola around the world. There's multiple different varieties of everything from nappies to baby powder to, and these products, these go on and on and on and on and on.
I wish I knew about your company's abilities when we were having that huge sriracha shortage. I would have solved all my problems.
Yeah, that was a big problem, wasn't it? But the second area, which I think is really interesting, is which again I think a lot of people don't realize. Actually, the largest social network in the world actually is not actually Meta. The largest social network in the world is actually the supply chain, and actually there is hundreds of millions every second of messages and transactions that go up and down that. Messages around, do you have, what about, you said, I thought it was going to be, didn't you tell me that? What about that product? No, you said it was going to be in that volume at that price. No, well, can I have it at half price? No, I've only got 80%. I'll pay a bit more against that next week if you got credit. That world is enormous. And that's where I think LLMs and I think AI plays a really interesting part, because I think that data is enormously valuable to brands to be able to understand, and distributors to be able to make sense of all that data and say, well, actually, a lot of people actually ask about that product, so why the hell don't we have that in stock? And actually, people have been asking for that price on that particular range for some time, and why are we not delivering it to them? And then, hold on a second, people who buy, that kind of brand of baby powder appear to be buying crates of beer at the same time. So who the hell are they? Oh, they must be dads. So and all that all that kind of product awareness and familiarity, it's operating not just in terms of inventory, but in terms of the dialogue, text dialogue, WhatsApp messages, fax messages, online emails. That's where I think there's a really interesting space around AI to kind of correlate that and turn that into meaningful data.
So when you think about people in the audience, whether they're an entrepreneur who wants to solve a problem, or they're an organization who wants to enter a new stage of their business model, one of those conversations always comes up is that, well, we would love to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't actually have the data to go do that. Do you have any advice for those? I mean, you've already gone off and done this. You've partnered with multiple organizations. You've brought all the data into a place where it didn't really exist like that for an industry. Anything that surprised you, or you thought that were like good, successful tips on how to actually go facilitate getting your hands on the data to solve a problem if you've got if you're brainstorming some kind of solution like that? Yeah,
I mean, for me, I've approached it in the way that I knew best, which is like, who's got the biggest problem? And I talked to them about it. So whoever had the biggest, and in our situation, that was definitely distributors. So they were the most important link in the supply chain, and they're also the weakest link in the supply chain. So you got that paradox going on, and a dangerous one, by the way, as well. So these are the guys that have got the most overhead. They got warehouses, they got logistics, they got van drivers, they got staff, they've got inventory they have to hold. They're the guys that have got the least amount of credit capability available to them. They're the ones that are under the most pressure to carry inventory. They're the ones that have the most critical importance of them in terms of getting their data right. They're the ones that have the biggest challenges around having to deal not only with the manufacturers, but also deal with the retailers. So they sit right in the middle of everything. And they're the ones that carry the biggest cost by a long way. And so we went to them because they had the biggest problem. And so I would encourage anybody who's in that situation. I think you've really got to think about, well, hey, I mean, there's a lot of fluff going on around LLMs and around AI and around, isn't it really cool that I can put Richard Burton head on my head and talking to Richard Burton voice and sound like I'm doing a Shakespearean. But when you get to the real use cases of stuff, there is huge industry problems around data at the moment, and the aggregation of that data and making that data turn that data into meaningful, valuable information. And so for me, for anyone, I would encourage them to look at who's got the biggest problem and then talk to them about it. So, for example, another company I've got a small investment in is a company that's doing freight forwarding software, and they're building a freight forwarding platform. One of the problems they're addressing is that brokers in freight forwarding, for example, take over 4,000 emails a day, and they have to go through 4,000 emails a day, and they have to figure out where do they find the best shipping costs from that. That's a great opportunity for an LLM model that feed through all those emails and work out, what, actually that's what the information is you really need to do, so you don't need to read through it all, and here's the best pricing for that product.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about another use case on another episode, very similar. You've got a data that is readily accessible to an organization, are things like email. You don't have to give as much thought to how are you going to store and use all that information, because people are already having to use it today, and it's already in a place where you can quickly turn that into experiments to determine, can I get more value out of this? Now, as you think about the future of the company and newer AI technologies, I mean, things are changing every single day. How are you thinking about what's next? Have you given any thought to how the changing landscape of AI capabilities are going to change the way that the next solution that you bring to market, or even just a change the way, even how your current processes work?
Yeah, very much so. So for us, the really key areas that we're working on, I can talk about this. The really key areas that we're working on are things like, our customers hate keyboards. They really hate them. A lot of our retailers use mobile handsets to communicate. They often order through their mobile handsets. At best, they're using web browsers and they're using a laptop. They really hate keyboards. It's such a pain in the arse for them, because you've got to type in so much information, SKU codes, pricing, so on and so forth. So we believe voice activation with AI is going to be really interesting, and we believe that's particularly important because although English is the natural language of the internet, especially in so many markets like across Latin America, Africa, these are the big growth markets for brands, especially brands in the US. They want to put their products in front of. For somewhere like Africa, for example, I think there's over 1,700 different dialects in Africa alone, and so you've got to be able to translate all those, into the natural language of the internet, which is English. I think that's a big, interesting space around AI. I think the second area where I think it'll have tremendous impact is around this guesstimating what you want. So you've always been ordering that, and actually you probably should be maybe looking at all that. And it will do things like, figure out delivering you the best pricing as the retailer, delivering you the best quality inventory, delivering you the best terms in which you can be buying that inventory, including the delivery terms. And it would start doing a lot of the hard work for you. The hard work being that manual, really grindy, painful, totally useless, am I really having to go through this all over again type work. And actually give you not only a bit of your life back, but actually enable you to actually do more with your actual business. At the moment. So I think those are two big areas. I think the third area as well, buying anything online, even with Amazon, it's a painful experience now. I describe it as almost sterile. You go onto Amazon and you say, well, is that a real review? Is that a real product? I type in, for example, I was doing this at Christmas, I wanted a diving watch, a Garmin diving watch. And so I didn't know I wanted a Garmin diving watch, I just wanted a diving watch. And I typed the diving watch into the search and it came up with 146 pages. I'm like, wow. And then I'm thinking, okay, so then I mess around a bit with the price and then it comes up with 78 pages. And then then it comes up with 42 pages. And then I look at the watch and I'm sort of twisting around. I think, well, what do I think? I think video is going to play a much bigger part in that. But also I think importantly, you can start to create a real AI experience in terms of being able to talk to maybe a non-human at the end of that, but someone's going to actually demo you that product. This is what's really cool about this watch. This is what you can do with it. A 45, 50-second kind of video interaction. I think that's going to play a really interesting part going forwards, especially in B2B, which is like one of the most boring buying experiences of all time.
Sure. Well, I think what an interesting thing to dive into then would be, you've obviously had success in rolling out AI solutions in your current business. There's some ideas that you have that are really exciting on where you want to take it next. How do you think about experimentation, testing, and then ultimately releasing these kinds of technologies with the greatest degree of success? We talk a lot about experimentation, avoiding disappointment. Are there any things that you've learned through your own deployments that have turned in successful, or from the failures that you had that you learned along the way? What's the best advice that you would give to those who are experimenting out there?
Yeah, no, two things. I mean, first of all, move fast, but don't break things. And secondly, if I'm manufacturing North Face clothing, right, I ain't going to do that in a store in Los Angeles. I'm going to do that at the top of Mount Everest. And so that's what we always did. We always built our products from the absolute most brutal, most difficult common denominator outwards. And so when we built RedCloud, we did that from the retailer. And we did that with the retailers that had, WhatsApp technology, they were using it best, distributors that had no technology at all, and manufacturers that had $50 million plus investment in SAP that didn't talk to anything apart from their production managers, and then tried to bring those three parties together in a platform experience. And so we built from the hardest points outwards, and there's a laziness, I think, that's come in. I don't mean laziness because people can't be bothered, but there's this kind of, well, it can't be that difficult if I've got this AI tool. Can't I just build something really quickly now? You can't skimp some of that stuff. I don't believe in a world where core quality software development is going to get replaced by AI anytime soon. But what I think AI does do, it takes a lot of that really repetitive manual work away and allows you to spend much more time on the creative stuff and getting that right. So there's two things. One is work on the really hard stuff first, and secondly, use the creative capabilities of AI to do that really well.
Yeah, really well said. I think a lot of people are experimenting on very easy use cases to build momentum. Yeah. But then as they get into the big problems, if you follow that same pathway and you're solving it in the least amount of friction that you're ever going to experience, then there's this false sense of the success that you think you're going to have until it enters the real world and the real friction begins. And if you hadn't designed it for those hard scenarios that you're referring to, I think that's where a lot of people fall off and realize that they haven't really created something worth using.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, when you see, Goldman Sachs of all people, Goldman Sachs last week produced a paper saying they weren't entirely convinced about how AI and certainly LLMs are really going to make the kind of numbers that people are expecting them to make in terms of profitability and revenue. I mean, when you've got a bank like that saying something like that, then some big question marks around that. I think there's a lot of hype around AI at the moment. I think people need to be very careful, especially around the OpenAI situation and what's going on around there. I think there's some real challenges around the quality of data that's being used. I think there's a danger. There's a lot of synthetic data being built on top of what was already slightly dodgy data anyway. I think you can get so far with scraping stuff from the internet, maybe cutting a deal with Time magazine, but that there's a longevity around that which is not great. And so I think there's a lot of questions around that at the moment, and I agree with you. I think what's happened is a lot of people rush very headlong into this thing. It's a typical gold rush. No one's really kind of taking too much notice of what they're doing. I've been around in business for a long time. I've built some very successful tech companies, several billion-dollar tech plus companies during that time. The one thing I've always learned is, do the hard stuff first and get that right, and then you can do the kind of cool, sexy, flashy stuff later on.
Yeah. On that note, I did hear that you have a role in the AI Foundation.
Yes.
Maybe you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll do an indecent plug for them. So the AI Trust Foundation is a Washington initiative headed up by Jarek Maneri. He's one of the most, one of the most admired congressmen, I think, around the US. Incredible guy, got an amazing track record in terms of not only his military service, but in terms of engineering that he's brought to America. Pillsbury, the law firm, are also heavily involved in it. There's a number of very other interesting people sat on our board. I was appointed to the board 3 weeks ago. The AI Trust Foundation is an initiative to bring an alternative voice to the hype, if you like, and is acting to do three things. One is to bring that alternative narrative and a realism to what's going on. Secondly is to absolutely call big tech out. They're naughty boys and they know it on some of this stuff, and they know who they are. And they need to get their house in order, right? Because some of the stuff that they're doing at the moment is not right on any level. And the third area is to actually be a champion for small businesses. And that's really at the heart still of everything I do. And it's to actually bring qualitative AI tools to small businesses that are affordable, that they can use, that can actually help them grow and scale their businesses. in a much more efficient and effective way than has ever been possible before. That's where the real value of AI is. And I think, the AI Trust Foundation, headed up by Jerry, is doing a fantastic job with that. And it was a great privilege and honor for me to be invited to join it.
Yeah, really admirable and great plug for the foundation.
Thank you.
As we think about bringing this to a close, any final words of wisdom that you have for the audience? I mean, you've built multiple companies, you've seen multiple waves of technology come and go. You are at the forefront of leveraging AI to go help in a really interesting business use case. And you've seen a lot. You've got a lot of experience. Final words of wisdom that you'd have for the audience.
Yeah, no problem. A couple of things then. So first of all, being first to market normally means you're the guy with all the arrows in the back. So being second to market's okay. And you know what? Being third to market's not a bad thing either. And so, ignore some of that hype and get realism around you. It's not that much of a rush. It really does not matter whether your product, half-baked, really does matter if that goes out the door in that state. Don't move fast and break stuff. Move slowly, but move in a way in which you can actually build demonstrable and quality software. That will last much, much longer than the hype stuff does. I think you need to be very careful of that. Secondly, question everything you're being told around AI at the moment, right? I mean, most people have not got a clue what they're talking about. Machine learning and AI has been around a very long time. Machine learning has been around since the 17th century when the first calculator got produced, for Christ's sakes. So, this isn't some kind of new fad thing. And I think really try and understand that. Third thing is, anybody that's either at board level, sales level, wants to be an entrepreneur, really get into understanding what AI is, what it's going to do, how it's going to work. Do 2 to 3 hours a day on that stuff. It's absolutely worth it. I came from a world which I knew a lot. I'm a tech entrepreneur, have been for over 30 years, and I learn every day. I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, really understanding, reading articles, reading beyond the hype. Not reading the McKinsey 96-page PowerPoint, but actually looking at Substack, articles around AI and kind of where the voice of reason really comes out. So you really understand what the real opportunities are and how you can leverage that to your advantage, of course.
Well, Justin, fantastic advice. It's been a real pleasure having you here, hearing about the story of RedCloud technology, your personal journey, how you're helping small businesses succeed. And would love to have you on again at some point in time as you start to think about what comes next and how this space continues to change.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony, and really enjoyed meeting you. And thanks. They were great questions. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Justin.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to LiveAI. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation. This episode is sponsored by Trace3. To learn more about why you should connect with them, about your enterprise practical AI use case, visit them at trace3.com or look for them on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.